Apeirogon by Colum McCann. I can't believe you can see this book, so I will put it down. It's very shiny. Let's start from 2013, the year where The Guardian published a piece about a man and the organization they founded. It was Rami El-Hanan and Bassam Aramir, I hope I pronounce it right, and their organization Combatant for Peace. One of them is Israeli parent man, and other one is Palestinian, which joined them together. They both lost their kids, their daughters. One was 10, one was 13. They were innocent victims of Israeli-Palestinian conflict, of war, and they both died. And these parents fighting their grief joined together and they give these peace talks and something like tech talks, sharing their story. And the main thing they're trying to share, that war is awful, that our kids can die in war, and it, you can't stay aside because there are innocent victims of any war, and you need to understand that conflict isn't just a politician matter, but very personal to some people. Then, in 2020, so 7 years later, Colum McCann wrote this novel. He took this story and this man, so the heart of this novel is non-fiction story, well known before him. And then he made this art object of this story. So you can't think about this novel as something logical, with beginning, middle and end. You can't think that this novel would touch, well, it did not touch mine, soul, or to understand what's going on, I had to go to this Guardian article and reread it, so I can understand what is this book about. This book is written in very small snippets. It can be from 2 pages to maybe few words. Sometimes it's even not words, it's a photo. Here you go. Few times during the book it's just blank space. I thought that something was missing in my copy, but then I read that it was intentional. It was just a pause in the narrative. So some of these chapters are just blank. These chapters go from 1 to 500. Then there are 2 pieces, these talks that these 2 men share with audience over and over again, because they travel the world to tell their story. So it's like first we go up, from 1 to 500. Then there is like a plateau where these 2 men share their stories. And then we descend from 500 to 1 again. So we end with chapter number 1. Why I am telling you all this? Because the form of this book is much more important than the subject of it. Colum McCann put much more effort in this symmetry and geometric forms that he shares in this book than in the stories of these 2 men. This is my point of view. This is I don't know if everyone can see this. I think he just shattered this story, and they try to pick these pieces like a mosaic. But it feels to me like he shattered this story and maybe a whole shelf of other glass pieces. We have here snippets from the days where this tragedy happened to each of these men, because it was not in the same day, it was different years. I think it's 7 years apart of this tragedy that happened to them. There are stories, snippets, thoughts it's not stories, it's just something. Sometimes it's story, something it's few words like thought or proclamation or something. After this happening, so they just combating their grief and trying to live with it, and then trying to fight for justice for not for their kids, but for world to understand their grief. Also, there are snippets from their past. Few of them, they both have quite a past. Rami El-Hanan, he spent 7 years in prison for terrorism, so they had past, those two men. And sometimes it's just essays or few words about birds, about weapons, about Israeli and Palestinian history, about fairy tales, about some just persons that visited Israel and Palestine and talking about it. There is Borges in this book, there is Francois Mitterrand, I think, in this book, and some other historical figures that just, I want to say they intertwine in the plot, but it's not. It's just something scattered around. I can't feel that all of these snippets have connection with each other. They definitely do not serve to tell the unique, like the united story. They are very different. They do not have logic in them, or I can't see it. Stories are tear apart, and the beginning can be on page 5, the middle, if it is a story, yes, it can be on page 150, and the end can be on page 400, or it can have no end at all. The truth is, this book was very hard to read because, first of all, I couldn't remember where I stopped. Of course, I had bookmarks, but it's just you look at the page and you remember nothing about reading it because it has no logic in it. It was very hard to force myself to take this book and read it because there was no story I want to understand or I want to unravel. There is no logic, there is no anything. It just sometimes it reads like a dictionary, sometimes it reads like, you know, there are books of famous quotes or something like that. Because if the beginning of this book, when I understood nothing about this story, I tried to solve this mystery, to understand what author is talking about, the latest part of the book, I thought some of these snippets were just like author he's using caps lock to make the point. I want you to make this part a Pinterest quote, or I want you to, to share this part in the Facebook. I try to understand why author did this, and I can't. I don't understand why. I do think that this book is better than non-book because, of course, there are a lot of talks about these two men now in internet and television because of this book, more than it was before it. So I think it did some good, but to think about this book as about good book, good story, I don't think Colum McCann brought anything important to this story. All of it was said before, and also I wanted to make a point. I don't know why I'm telling this, but there is a lot about birds in the first half of the book, just birds, different kind of birds flying around, and these snippets telling us about the migration, about how they nested, about all these things, about how people eat these birds or other birds or any birds. And on the second half of the book, there is a lot about sound and music, which again I do not understand how to make connection with the main story telling. This book is telling or not telling, I don't know. One thing more that disturbs me general, this is definitely a man's story. Though both of kids killed in this story were girls, we do not know much about them, because you can feel that these parents had no very close connection with these girls. They really do not talk to them too often. They make some observations, how they dance, how they sing, how they learn something at school, but you never know these girls. You never know anything which troubled them. You know about their school projects, so some things that they showed their dads, but I don't think they were good confidants. And also, the one thing that disturbed me the most, you almost do not hear from moms and other kids in the story. And it shows, I think, the heart of it. This is a book written by a man about two men fighting their grief alone. And I want to hear more about mothers. Did they fight their grief together with their husbands, or they were alone in this story because their husbands were too busy thinking about their own feelings? How kids in this story lived after that. We know something about one of the kids, and you have a lot. You have 3 brothers in one family, and I have, think, 5 more children in another family. So these women were very busy fighting their grief and raising their children, and we hear nothing about them. And I think it made this book more political and less personal. You can see the rage of this man pointed up to political issues, but I mean, it's very complicated matter, and it's very hard to understand any of these 3 men, the author and the 2 main protagonists, main heroes of this story, because the author do not give us this chance. These are too many things going around. Absolutely, they do not belong in this story, I think. And what I'm trying to tell, that this book is not a storytelling piece. It is more art form, which you can connect with. And I saw a lot of people on Goodreads told that this is the best book of the year and this is the best book of their life. I understand that if you connect these pieces together, if you can do this, if you can see the logic in it, then maybe you can appreciate it more than I, but I couldn't. It was, the hardest book to read this year, and I can't say that I had something from it more than reading these few pages from Guardian. Did not like it at all. The Mirror in the Light by Hilary Mantel is the ending of her trilogy about Thomas Cromwell. And before starting this Booktube Prize, I haven't read any of this trilogy. So, with the understanding that I don't want to read the last book in the series and without reading any others, I've read Wolf Hall last month, so to prepare myself for The Mirror in the Light. I haven't read Bring Up the Bodies, and now I think it's not a very good idea to read the 3rd volume before reading first 2 volumes, but I couldn't do this. There are very big and rather complicated books, so I mean I couldn't read it in one whole sitting. So then I thought that I can't, for one side, I can't think about these books not as a trilogy. So they are very connected with each other, and I mean this is like a one book divided into 3 parts. But from the other hand, I need to judge only this book, not others. And maybe it's better for me like that, to have this gap in the middle and to judge only this volume with all other books in this Booktube Prize, so I can, you know, make good judgment. So, The Mirror and the Light. This is a book which describes the period from execution of Anne Boleyn to execution of Thomas Cromwell. And as we all know how the story ends, and also we know what will be after Thomas Cromwell's death, there are no like spoilers in this book, because you know all the things, and if you don't know, there is Wikipedia, you can read, and it's history, no spoilers. What I do like about trilogy and about this book in particular, that I like to be in the head of Thomas Cromwell. I like to see how he made decisions. I like to see different paths that he and history could take, and why he decided to do what he decided to do. I loved to know, I mean, his regrets, and there are a lot of nightmares in this book, and the death of Anne Boleyn, and not only hers but all other people that died with her, it shifted very heavy weight on Thomas Cromwell's shoulders. And I do like how complicated his character is, how he has regrets, but also he has understanding what he needs to do to be good friends with Henry, and how, I mean, it may shift his future and future of his country. I really liked all of it. There are a lot of subplots that I do not know were they necessary or not for the book, because there are different storylines. They are not so important. Again, this is historical events, and of course many of these events, or you know, people and their relationships, they help us to form the opinion about Lord Cromwell, and about, you know, maybe similar situations in different books, and how he handled each of it differently, because there is that background now to his life. He's older, he saw different things, he did many different things, and now he changed his opinion about some people, or about how to handle this or that situation. But again, I think this book could be shorter. I do like the structure that this book starts with the death, with the execution, and ends with the execution. It gives this structure and symmetry, and like a closure to the book. I did like all explorations of his thoughts, I mean hypothetical thoughts, because we do not know really what his thoughts were, and his dreams, and how emotional this book feels. Though, I mean, it's very hard with historic books to understand what brings the author in them, because there are historic events, there are letters, there are people that we know a lot about, and it's very hard to understand, do I enjoy history, or do I enjoy the author's take on this history? So these emotional parts that are like dreams, thoughts, that they were not written on paper, they are definitely the imagination of Hilary Mantel, and I enjoy them. And I think that she explains character of Thomas Cromwell very well, and very he's in the very gray area. He is no black and white. He make very wrong decisions and has regrets, and he make very, maybe even small but good decisions, and he is very proud of them. It will be very hard to review this book for the Booktube Prize and to make a ranking, because, I mean, this book differs so much from everything I've read for this round. This is different genre. This is very different quality of prose. The quality of language is gorgeous. It's amazing. I haven't read this language in many years. I do think that these works are very profound and very, maybe too detailed. Maybe it can be shorter. I mean, this is the only flaw of this book. I do think it can be shorter, and I do think maybe, I don't know, I liked it. But again, can we really place the third volume in the series with standalones and judge it like a best or not best book of the year? I don't know. I don't think so, but it's not my decision. And this book was in my, cohort, in my round, and I need to say something about this. This is an amazing book. I'm very happy that I've read it. I definitely want to read second volume of the trilogy. I do think it will be very interesting. Yeah, I think I'll give it, I don't know, maybe 4.5 stars. I'm not a big, I can't say that this genre is my favorite historical fiction, but in historical fiction I think this is the most memorable of last years. Also, I think, I've read this is the last book in the Booktube Prize I've read for this round, and I do think that if we will return to this conversation in 5-10 years, I do think really that the only book that will be important in 10 years is this trilogy. Again, this book like as a part of this trilogy. I don't think anything else will stand the approbation of time. I do think that all of these books, some of them are better, some of them are worse, but they are very forgettable. They will be, we will forget them in 5 years. But this trilogy, it will stay with, humanity for a longer. So yeah, I do think that these 3 books as a whole is the best of the books I've read for the Booktube Prize. But as we judge only last book, I can't say that it is the best. I don't think it's comparable. So yeah, that was about Hilary Mantel and the Mirror of the Light. Look at this, we made it. Semifinals, Booktube Semifinals, Section B, there were 6 books. Apeirogon by Colum, McCann, The Pool of the Stars by Emma Donoghue, The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett, The Mirror and the Light by Hilary Mantel, My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, and Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. First, thank you, Robert, for this experience. I thought it was amazing. I never read such an amount of new books in my whole life in 1 year. I liked the experience a lot. It was very interesting to understand, or trying to understand, what the bookish community is living about, with right now, what contemporary authors are writing about, and I think that was a great range of books in one round. The one thing I did not like is in both rounds I had books from a series, like the last book in the series. So in first round, in Octofinals, it was Summer by Ellie Smith, and here it was The Mirror of the Light by Hilary Mantel. And I haven't read, it was my fault, so it's not about anything. I haven't read any of this series before Booktube Prize, so I needed to put more effort in here than if there will be no series in the Booktube rounds. And I do not know how to rank this last book in the series, because although I think that the whole series is maybe the most important thing that we have from all these books, but I can't divide the series into separate books, especially the Hilary Mantel's trilogy, because I do think that this is the whole story just parted in 3 parts, and it's not like we have some very separate things from one another. And I will tell my rank right now, but I will repeat that thing that I said before. I do think that from all these books I've read here, the Hilary Mantel trilogy will be the only one that will survive in our memories in maybe 10 years. So from all these books, the only one that will be remembered for the longest is this trilogy. But I don't think that The Mirror and the Light was the best experience for me from all these books. So that's how my ranking went. Number 6, so the worst, was, I'll try to find it, The Pool of the Stars by Emma Donoghue. I did not like this book at all. I do not think that it describes this topic the best it can, but also I think that this book was given too small amount of time for I mean, it was published in 2 months after the first draft, and I do think you can see this in this book. It was published in a hurry, and I don't think it was for good. So yes, this is number 6. Number 5, Apeirogon by Colum McCann. This is more than an art form than a story, and because of the nonfiction part that is in the base of this book, I do not think that Colum McCann brought anything valuable to this story. I do think that this book do not do justice for this story, and I did not like the experience of reading it at all. So, yes. Then number 4, My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This is a good book. It could be a very good memoir, but it has more flaws than like best parts in it. It is too personal for the author, and so she can't step aside and look at the story at the heart of this book, from the side. The author brings more questions to the table that can answer in this book, and I don't think that this unclarity in her thinking brought. I do think that this unclarity, it damaged this book. It could be much better if the author would be more not the debut novel, not the debut author. Also, this book was written for 20 years, and you can see that it does not have the lightness of writing in it, and the topic is rather hard, and this unclearness of thinking and not very good skills of telling the story brought this book not in the best place in my ranking. But again, I think this is a good book. It just is worse than other books in this group B. And then 3 books that from my point of view, can go to the other round. The Mirror and the Light by Hilary Mantel. I do think this is a very good book, and this is the story that the whole trilogy tells is like genius. It's very good book, and it's very good trilogy, and I like the writing very much. The character arc, I mean, there are some choices that author made. So there are too many characters in this book, and so it felt for you, like for reader, like a big effort to understand all these people and all the interconnections. But again, this is the part of the huge trilogy, and you have to go into this book prepared for this, because you saw almost all of these people during first two books, and so you know them. It felt for me even like a bigger effort because I haven't read the trilogy before Booktube Prize. So I've read Wolf Hall and I skipped Bring Up the Bodies for now. But I definitely want to read the whole three books maybe again, because I really liked Hilary Mantel's work. So this is number 3. Why it's not number 1 or number 2? This book has its own flaws, first of all, and also I do not feel that I know how to divide the whole of the trilogy into, I can't rank the whole trilogy against other books. It will be not fair, but I can't think that this book is on its own. It's a part of something bigger. So it was very hard for me to understand where in the ranking can it be. I do want it to go to the finals. So Mirror and the Light on the 3rd place. And then number 2 is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I really liked this story. This is very enjoyable and very hard to read at the same time. It broke me several times, but for the good. Also, there were a few choices of the author that I did not enjoy or support, and that's why it's on number 2. But overall, this is a very good book, and thank you for pushing me to read it, because I liked it very much. And on the 1st place is The Vanishing Calf by Brit Bennett. Yes, this is the most commercial book, I think, of this, maybe except of The Pool of the Stars. And yes, there were some choices in the middle that I did not support because they were very lazy for the author. There are some consequences that were funny to see in the serious book. But from the other hand, the story, how tight it is in its storytelling, how all characters are on their own places, and how you can see the growth of them. And I was very interested in all these characters. I really wanted to know what will be with them next. And I really liked representation in this book. It was not only there, like, in many books we just say it has a good representation, but the character, transgender character in here, was so warmly written, with so much love, understanding and heart. I liked it very much. It was a pleasant surprise to me. This book brought more to me than I thought it would, and it had more depth than I thought it would have. So that is the 1st place. Again, this is not the best book on the market right now or in this reading year, but from these 6 books, I think it did more than it could, where other books did less than they could. So this is the best book for me. Let's see how this ranking is go once more. Pool of the Stars by Emma Donoghue, Apeirogon by Colum McCann, what are these? My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, Mirror of the Light by Hilary Mantel, Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, and The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. Thank you again, and happy finals for the Booktube Prize.